computer. So I see people out and about making pictures and stuff, and big crowds, and I'm like, get away. But before 6 months ago, that's all the time. All right, participants. I'm starting the recording, and let me share screen. All right.
I have a question actually.
Go ahead.
Could you talk a little bit about the research paper outline that's on the schedule for this week?
Oh yeah, usually I do. Is that due soon?
I said it's under period 2 for this week.
Yeah, it says the first sentence for the outline is due.
I don't grade it, but I would like to look at it just to give you some feedback. I guess we'll set it up like a grade so I can give feedback and then everybody won't see it. And just remember this won't, it'll show up as a 0 unless I can figure out something better. Let's see. Oh, here we go. All right, so I'll be able to interact, but it won't give you a grade. So let's take a look at my stuff on papers. Do I have a link to my lecture? Let's see what this shows up. Yes, there's a lecture, related material, do's and don'ts, criteria. So you'll notice that the first thing, topic, something ancient, but ancient in one of the areas we are looking at. So Sumer, Egypt, Palestine, Greece, or Rome. I think that's mostly it. Although you can compare Egyptian pyramids to New World pyramids if you want to, something like that. But it needs to at least be, based in the ancient world that we're studying. It can be a literature research paper where you're making an argument about literature. But since this is an interdisciplinary course, I allow you to do any topic from the era. A lot of my students will end up doing a research paper on something in their field, like in their major. So a couple of quarters ago, I had a paper on Aristotle's version of physics, which, a lot of differences from Newton and who's the big guy? Einstein, right? He changed the world. But Aristotle was nevertheless important, and sometimes he was, correct, sometimes not, but he's at least trying to create the field of physics. And you can do that for anything. The main thing is to be narrow. So if you're doing Roman engineering, don't do all of Roman engineering. You could do a whole paper on concrete. What was it that made Roman concrete so special in ways that we're still trying to figure out today. They built shit to last, or how the Romans built a road or an aqueduct or a specific building. Like, don't talk about Greek art. Talk about the Parthenon, maybe. Something, then that's Greek engineering as well as art. But something narrow that you can deal with in a paper. A sentence is a simple declarative sentence stating the idea you're trying to prove in your paper. If that's a bit vague for you, I've got a whole lesson on thesis exercises. Yeah, with a video now. So sit through that, work through it. How to do a bibliography. We like the MLA bibliography, and a good way to do it is easybib.com. Here's a class where well, that's the research paper, but here I'm grading a research paper. And it's pretty much along the lines that I'll grade your papers. Don't retell the story, don't give the author a biography. And here are different ways to analyze a literary work. But as I said, you can go outside that if you want to for this class. So just be sure you have a good, strong, narrowly stated thesis. That's mainly what I'm looking for. And then your outline, which is what the sentence outline is about. The outline should also be focused and logical and, unpack your thesis. So the whole paper is like an acorn, like an oak tree that grows out of your thesis statement. Okay. Then I want to see you using and citing and working in direct quotes from primary sources. These are the ancient sources. And also secondary material. These are research sources, like professors writing. And well written, and you should have good grammar. So a couple of things. Comes to ancient sources for our class, it's hard to beat the Loeb Classical Library. Which is the one I showed you. The green ones have Greek on the left, English on the right. The red ones have Latin on the left, English on the right. And these are good resources for ancient sources. We have a good bunch of these in the library, thanks to a couple of professors who've spent decades. Every year when the library asks what books would you like to see us buy, they would come up with a few more Loebs for them to get. So we have a pretty good setup. However, as you know, the library is infested by plague and possibly by now flying monkeys. So Perseus .tufts.edu. They're very picky about how you do their. Let's try www. And then it shows Perseus.tufts.edu. So they've got this stuff in English and Latin, and these are actually the old Loebs, for the most part, put online because they are old enough that their text is public domain, their notes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Magee, what could the source or like our topic can be, like what are the restrictions on the topic again, just to make sure that
Sumeria, Egypt, Palestine, Greece, and Rome.
It can be just sort of
whatever you want. What's your major?
Well, I'm going to computer science.
All right. So what is that ancient computer thing they found in Greece?
Maybe you could do something about typography or something like that.
Oh yeah. Although at the time you would call it, because they didn't have type, you could call it, what is it? Maybe they do call that typography. The Antikythera, which is this mysterious thing. I think it's astronomical. but it was meant to do advanced calculation, and you don't have to do that. You can do the history of the abacus or something like that if you wanted to do computer science.
Yeah. Like
you
I
wanted-
was a big history nerd, and because the immediately thing I was thinking of was just the because I was thinking it may be a little too broad though, is the complex nature of the fall of Rome.
way too big.
Yeah.
But you could untangle maybe one of those, like, did the plague bring Rome down? Because there's some
Okay.
think that the plague that went around in the 3rd century, history and evolution of typography. So yeah, who was interested in that? Which one of you was talking about that?
I merely gave that as a suggestion, but
Yeah, well, if you're interested in it, there's a lot out there, and most of the modern fonts are based some way in ancient fonts. And you can see the influence of the chisel or the quill in how the fonts are made. So yeah, if you're interested in it, I can point you in some directions, and you could probably find a lot without my help.
I think I'd probably want to do something having to do with medicine or something like that, because going into veterinary, and I know that medicine for humans is a whole nother can of worms from animal medicine, but
Not that
gotta start
different.
somewhere.
Yeah, we're not that different, right? Then you'll be wanting Hippocrates or Galen, and of course, what they bequeathed the world were the 4 humors, which I was lecturing about today. As ridiculous as they seem now, they're at least an attempt to describe the body and human health scientifically, as opposed to mystically, right? It's not the gods smiting you. You've got too much blood, or you got too little blood, or too much black bile, or too little black bile. If you can just get it balanced out right, then you'll be okay. And the problem was we froze at that level for a couple of thousand years without really making much advances in the way of medicine, rather than seeing it as the first hypothesis, which we could then move on to something else. But yeah, you could talk about
So Hippocrates and
Galen, Galen, I think. Yes, and I've got an ancient joke for you. The doctor went to the statue to see the statue of Zeus. What happened? Well, nothing happened right away, but 3 days later, we heard that the statue of Zeus had died. So yeah, they didn't.
So, Dr. Magee, just
Yes.
one other, just quick bounce off. What a more narrow topic, maybe be specifically the sudden destruction of the Library of Alexandria, because that's
Well,
I
sudden
believe
or
that's
flow, you could discuss what exactly happened to it, because there's a lot of debate.
that. So I could discuss like the whole sort of mystery of we don't really know what happened.
Right.
All right.
So the reason I was a little hesitant, I think this is it. All right, so here's the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Oh, crap. Volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There may be more. So you're opening a can of worms with a big topic. You have to focus in. That's what I'm talking about. It's not a bad topic. It just has to be narrowed down more. I mean, you can trace. Oh, we can bring font and the decline and fall of the Roman Empire together. and Louisiana Tech University. Okay, so when you're walking up the stairs in GTM, at every floor, when you're halfway there, and if you're, old like me and you're standing there panting, you can look at that. Question is, what font are they using for Louisiana Tech University? And that's not the only one. They've got more of a blocky font that has kind of a collegiate look, like football, basketball, that stuff. But what is this font and what is it telling us? Well, we're not going to take all day to make you do this, but there are font matchers on the interwebs. Remember. Okay, so this is, let's see if we can get a big one. This is the Trajan column. And at the base of the column is this inscription. Here we go. That's a pretty good one. Okay, which is the basis for the Trajan font that you see at Louisiana Tech University. Okay, so you're the Louisiana Tech design team, and you've got roughly 2,000 fonts you can use on that sign. Why would you pick the Trajan font? What are you trying to say to the world?
You can stand for a long period of time.
Yeah, we will endure. We're Louisiana Tech University. So Trajan, what were his dates? Uh, 98 to 117 AD. He was the emperor over the Roman Empire at its greatest. So this is the Roman Empire under Trajan. It had never been that big before, and it would never be that big again. So this is the peak. So here, Jack, is where it turned, right? Then maybe there was something else turning before that, but Rome still had the capacity to build bridges into German territory. Do you know how insane that seems to the Roman mind? Why is that something no sane Roman would ever do?
Build a bridge?
Yeah, across a rushing river into German territory.
Well,
what's on the other side of that bridge?
It's Germany, and
like
Germany was
barbarians?
infamous for
It's the
being very
barbarians.
barbaric at the time.
Yeah, it's the barbarians across that bridge, and he's like, "Let me at them." The guy that came after him, Hadrian, is known best for cutting the bridges and building the wall to keep my ancestors up in Scotland from running down into Britain. You see where the red gives way to white in England. Well, that's the ancient dividing point set up by Trajan. So now from here on, we're retrenching, right? We're just trying to slow the retreat. Okay. So Trajan font, Rome at its greatest. Not just Rome, Rome at its greatest. And if you compare it to the font of the Lincoln Memorial, it's very similar. I wonder if the Lincoln Memorial has U's. I bet they went ahead and made a U. Yeah, they went ahead and put a U in there. So it's not exactly the same, but see these dots? See that dot and that dot after ventured? Guess what? That is from the Trajan inscription. And the reason they don't have U's is U and V are the same letter in ancient Latin. It's just easier to make the V shape when you're inscribing it. When I said the tools leave their impression on the letter, it's easier to make the V shape, but when you're writing, it's easier to make the U shape. So, but it was the same, like senatus, that's a U. Populos, those are U's. Most of those V's are U's. Anyway, we got sidetracked. You guys sidetracked me. Any questions? Let's talk about. Oh, go ahead.
Would you have any ideas for topics for business majors?
You know, the development of money in ancient Rome. That was another problem. Was they had coin-based money, and they kept having to devalue it. So there was less and less of whatever was valuable in the money. So you had inflation. But yeah, just look up ancient Roman business practices. Now, let's take a look at a database. A good source of primary sources is the Loeb or the Perseus database. A good source of secondary sources is JSTOR, which is short for Journal Storage. And they have all of the topics. You know, they go back further than like the, the MLA, which we use in proper English classes, it covers modern language. ILM is Modern Language Association. And so they don't have much on ancient Roman. They don't have much outside of literature. JSTOR doesn't have as many sources from each individual area, but it covers a lot more territory. So ancient Roman currency. Let's see if they have anything. Well, I've never looked that up before. Diocletian's currency regulations, whatever those were. Entangled objects on coinage in the Republican world. Wow, you could get really specific. Oh, the Roman market economy, if you want something broader. Who is that asking about Roman business? Touchstone? Any of that look good to you? We could try the Roman economy. Now, don't do all the Roman economy. It's too big. So pick something from the Roman economy. You might think about the period when they were really going up. Or the move from the Roman agrarian economy of early to the slave economy, because early on yeoman farmers, citizens of Rome, did all the farm work, right? And then Rome got rich, and the rich people wanted a villa so they could sit around and look down their nose, but they didn't want, you know, trashy neighbors. So they would buy an estate, and they would push the yeoman farmer off the land. They bought him out or pushed him out, and then they drifted on into Rome, where you had to provide bread and circuses to keep them happy. And they put slaves on the land because slaves were cheaper than citizens. But the backbone of the Roman legion until that point had been the yeoman farmer. They worked hard on the farm every day until it was time to go to war for a couple of months in the summer, and off they would go in the legions. They were really hardy, they were really tough. They just the time in the army was a vacation from the farm. And so once you lost the original economy that built up Rome, that could be one of those turning points where after that, you know, no more yeoman farmers, Legion's not quite what it used to be. Does that make sense? All right, so there's lots of stuff on economics under the Romans.
And you do want the sentence outline Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be Thursday exactly. Try to get it later in the week. Okay, so secondary sources. Let me show you my website. 103, if you just look up Magee, I'm the top one, practically the only one. You see classics links? Oh, I've got some sample papers in myth links. There we go. It's a paper I wrote a century ago, well, a millennium ago, for a class. So those are, different papers I wrote over the years. And when I was a grad student, I just kind of converted to the web at some point. The classics links, we start with Greek and Latin, or rather Latin and Greek, but if you go below that, I've got a lot of sources together. For general stuff. And so if you're interested in Aesop's fables, there's a ton of them. Don't do all of Aesop, do, like a fable or two. Ancient library. Some of these I haven't looked at in a long time. A lot of these are probably dead. The ancient library does not seem, I think we've had another library burn. Let's see if anything ever shows up. Ooh, ancient fonts, but these are just for typing. Bartleby. Bullfinch's mythology, the Chicago Homer. I thought he lived in Springfield. So anyway, lots of stuff. If you're going to, here was Hippocrates. Hippocrates online, maybe. In Greek, Latin, and French, so maybe not so much help. And both of those pages are gone. The internet, where stuff can last forever, or 5 minutes, depending on which one comes first. Okay. So typically, what are sources we do not use? One is the encyclopedia, unless it's a specialized encyclopedia, like the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Oh, and they left a forwarding address. How about that?
What an encyclopedia like Britannica?
No.
No.
Try to avoid Britannica. We use it to start off with, and especially avoid Wikipedia. But we all use Wikipedia. We just don't put in our papers. What's the other one?
We just take the sources Wikipedia cited and then cite those.
Right, exactly. Use it as your starting point to get you in the right direction. I use it all the time. Just don't tell my colleagues. Okay, the Catholic Encyclopedia is awesome. And they have a lot of stuff on the ancient world. I bet we could find Plato. Maybe we could blow this up just a tad. I'm getting hungry.
So what we are submitting, so what you just set up, the outline, is it a full-on outline, or is it more of a a thesis?
It's your thesis and your basic outline. It doesn't have to be super developed.
Okay.
Now, here is the CCEL. If you do something religious, you need to work in some quotes from the church fathers. They were almost all fathers, so I can call them the church parental units if you prefer. Ante-Nicene. So, I try to find something in here. The search engine is not very easy. Look for original sin, CCEL. Let's say Augustine. What is this Philip Schaff? I wanted Augustine. On original sin. Okay, this is something, but I'm not sure what. SCHAFF. Okay, here we go. St. Augustine in Caridian, which is Greek for manual. It means handbook. Forgiveness of sins in the church, the problem of evil. The manual is boiled down, so you might find stuff boiled down here, which would be helpful. All right, so let's see. I think there's a Jewish encyclopedia. It's never had, yeah, lovely. That's better. Let's look up Philo. Philo Judaeus. Well, I got an article. So it looks like they have this that they're converting over into internet text. So, so those would be the two encyclopedias. Three. There was one earlier. I can't remember what it was anymore. Okay, so this has more probably primary sources than secondary, but there are some secondary. Okay, so primary sources, secondary sources, and well, one quote from the Rolls-Royce of English language dictionaries. Any idea what that would be? Rolls-Royce of English language dictionaries. Okay, somebody make a guess so we can move on.
Webster's Dictionary.
That is the Chevrolet of English language dictionaries. I always use that joke. It's a dad joke. What can I say? Now, the one we're talking about is made in England and is much more expensive, not to mention a lot bigger. So here is the Oxford English Dictionary, one copy of it. It's as large as an encyclopedia. You can buy this for a couple of $1,000, or you can use it on the tech website for freebies. So go back to the LaTeX library, go down to databases. O for Oxford, O is for Oxford. Now, are we talking about Odysseus today?
Yes, sir.
Odyssey?
Yes.
Okay.
The
So,
Odyssey.
So one of the themes of the Odyssey is nostalgia. Let's look up the word. Click on full entry. You know, to view it all. Full entry, show all. Pronunciation, origin, borrowed from Latin, it's post-classical. Oh, way post-classical if 1688 is the earliest word, but it's not formed from Latin, it's formed from the Greek nostos in Algia. And because you now know Greek, at least the alphabet, you can read that. 1756, 1900, 1976. So it's a fairly recent word formed from ancient Greek. And so work in at least one quote from the OED. There's also at Perseus two great dictionaries, the Greek dictionary and the Latin dictionary. Which you can, like a lot of dictionaries. Okay, Lewis in Short is the definitive Greek dictionary, and Liddell, and Latin, and Liddell and Scott is the definitive English one, Greek English. So let's say palutropos, which is the word used to describe Odysseus over and over. It's one of his epithets. So what does it mean? You go to the LSJ, which is the biggest one. Much turned, much traveled, much wandering, turning many ways, metaphorically shifty, versatile, wily, used of Hermes. And Plato took it in this sense when applied to Odysseus, as do we all. Fickle, complicated disease, various manifold. So it's not nearly as massive as the OED, but it was just starting. They've had a brand new Greek dictionary come out while I was in school, but I stuck with my LSJ because you could get one, used pretty cheap. All right, any more questions? Yeah, we burned up an hour. Okay. We had fun because we opened so many windows. And I will post this so you can rewatch it if you have any memory issues. I hope it's recording. Is there any way to know if it's recording? Oh, yes, it is still recording. Okay, I'm going to reshare the screen. Okay, let's get down to the Odyssey. Oh, here we go. Study guide questions. Some of these you'll see are very similar to the ones we had in the Iliad. We know what an epithet is. Do we know what the Odyssey is? Did anybody do your homework? Is what I'm asking.
Isn't a theodicy basically something having to do with gods or something like that?
Yes. Where is my PowerPoint? What was theta? Q? Oh, wait, we need Greek. All right, so that is What word is that?
Theos.
Theos, yes. Well, you're probably better pronouncing it than I am. I've got atrocious pronunciation. All right, and this word? Oops. Oh, I need maybe another, what size are these? 32. Insert 32. So Dike is justice, which doesn't really tell you exactly what the word's going to come out, but it's got to do something with God's justice. It is a justification of, oh, what do you, let's see. How do I can't see it. I am too stupid to figure this out. Well, anyway, I don't know that she was actually showing us anything. So it's arguing that the world is a just place despite the suffering that goes on in it, and that the gods themselves are just. Where have we seen this word before? We read a whole book that was a theodicy.
That was no one right before this. That was the Iliad. Wait,
No, we're back in Bible territory.
Oh,
Was it Job?
Yes, of course. So what do we have here? We have two men who are suffering because of the, negative supernatural interventions, let's say. One is suffering because, Job is suffering because of Satan, and Odysseus is suffering because of Poseidon. And yet the gods are anxious in both cases to vindicate, you could use that word, to vindicate their role in the universe. So Zeus at the beginning of the Odyssey, what is he talking about? Remember, what are they doing at the very beginning of the Odyssey?
Zeus he's talking about how great I want to say he was talking specifically, he was sort of almost gloating about how great all these people are. And then Athena specifically comes by and sort of says, well, what about Odysseus?
It's not
like,
how
have you forgot
great
him?
they are. It's about how things, what goes around comes around, right? We sent a warning to, Orestes, Clytemnestra, Agamemnon, Aegisthus. Not to kill Agamemnon, right? And what did Aegisthus do?
Killed Agamemnon.
Right. And now Orestes has come and avenged the death of Agamemnon by killing Aegisthus and Clytemnestra, Agamemnon's wife, who had become Aegisthus' lover, and then his wife. He's saying, in the world that we have, Is there I think I can draw. Yeah, let's see if this works. So what's the drawer? Ah, there we go. How do we undraw? All right, so Zeus is saying that in this life, there are downs and ups. And this was a Greek idea. That should be a straight line. But then suffering and pleasure and pain, if you go along, you get a mixture of both. That was the 2 jars of Zeus that Achilles talked about at the end of last period. And sometimes Zeus will give you some good things out of the good jar, and sometimes he'll give you shitty things after the shitty jar. But what if Zeus doesn't like you? What then?
Well, then everything goes wrong. Just Zeus,
Right.
Zeus has it out for you, and he'll make sure that your life is living hell.
Yes. So if you displease Zeus, which I seem to have done, I you start off, but you displease him, and things just get worse and worse and worse and worse until you go off the edge of the screen. So Justus could have had a decent life. The reason that he died early is he wouldn't listen to the gods and the warnings of the gods. They say, for God's sake, wear a mask. And he wouldn't do it. And so he got COVID. Oh, wait, that's somebody else. Okay, so Justus killed Agamemnon. And then what example does Athena come up with? A rejoinder. What about, it's the first page of the book. I always read the first page and the last page. I think you said it, Jack. Who does it think I want to talk about?
Oh, Athena wanted to talk about Odysseus,
Right.
specifically.
What about Odysseus? He's still suffering on that island. Now, this is an important comparison for the book. We've got Agamemnon and then Clytemnestra and Orestes. Who does that family kind of look like? Oh, I know what I can do. So essentially they are the opposite, they match. Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, and Orestes match Odysseus, Penelope, and Telemachus. Agamemnon was only gone a mere 10 years in his quest. And the minute he gets back, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus conspire. And she and her lover conspire to kill Agamemnon. And then Orestes has to come back and kill them both later because they did his daddy wrong. So what is to keep the same thing from happening to Odysseus?
Penelope not having a lover.
Right. Penelope being faithful. So we talk about the faithfulness of Penelope as well as her smarts, right? She's able to keep the lovers at bay, the suitors, for all those years. 20 years is a long time for a kingdom not to have a king. I mean, we've been making it for 4 and it's just exhausting. But in addition to her being smart, he has to be smart. Agamemnon strides in like a lion, because that's all Agamemnon knows how to do, is stride in like a lion. Odysseus, when he gets home, how does he come back? Does he say, honey, I'm home? Like
Athena disguises him as an old beggar.
Right. So he can get the scoop out on what's happening so that he will make his move when he's ready, right? He won't be rushed. Which gets us into the primary difference between Odysseus and Agamemnon and Odysseus and Achilles. Where's our new slide? New slide.
Right click on underneath the 2.
Ah, thank you.
You can make a new slide.
There we go. Now we're cooking. Okay, insert a text box. Okay, what were we talking about?
Athena
The difference
disguised
between Odysseus, Agamemnon, and Achilles.
Yes. Remember this. Let's go back to our Greek. Okay, what are these two words and what do they mean?
It's like metis and dia. One's like the mind and one's like strength.
Right. I'm powerful.
Yeah, it's like honor. I think one of them sort of roughly
That
translates
was
into
Timmy, and there's a lot of that here too.
Yeah, time.
Timmy, not time, Timmy. Don't you remember? Oh, you're not a South Park fan? Timmy and the Lords of the Underworld. Sorry, there are no silent letters in Greek. Just remember that. So Timotheus is Timothy, or yeah, that's it. All right, so he is known for his mental strategery, right? And that brings us to a word that is used over and over about Odysseus. All right, what can you make of that? Didn't we just see that a minute ago when we were doing a dictionary search? Okay, the first part of this word is poly, right? And what does poly mean?
Multiple.
Right. And tropos is a twist or a turn. Can be a twist in the road, but it can also mean a twisty individual. Like, what kind of person comes up with the idea of the Trojan horse?
Odysseus.
Right. It's not just the horse, right? The Greeks withdraw. They pretend they've gone. The Trojans go out to see what's up. There's this guy tied up to a stick, and they lose him. He says he's being punished. The Greeks left because they were under curse, and this, symbol of victory. The giant horse will get Poseidon on their side, and to the strategy trickery, he gets them to think, we want that horse inside Troy. It's too big to go in the door, so they literally tear out part of the wall to get the horse in. So it's not just the Greeks hiding in the horse. It's, getting inside their heads, right? And that's what Odysseus does. He's polytropic. Okay, let's do the family. We need a text box. Oh, hello. Let's do center. So the sun is Telemachus. Why isn't that centering? The father and mother. This is so much easier and on the board. Odysseus and Penelope. Odysseus, his father is Laertes. And what's his mother's name? Anticlea. I can't remember my own family either. I actually remember these better than I do my. So it's getting confusing. Okay, so Odysseus, his father is Laertes, so he's sometimes called Laertides. Does it look kind of like a family tree? But it keeps going. Do you remember when he was young, what happened to his leg? You remember when she was washing his leg, the old lady, or when he was proving to Penelope who he was, he showed her his leg. What's up with his leg? Anybody remember? Right, he's got a scar on his leg because when he was a kid, he went to see Grandpa, who was Autolycus, and he wasn't overly careful with the lad. He wanted him to grow up to be a manly Greek man, right? So they went boar hunting, and he got cut by the boar tusk, which could be the end of your leg or you die or something. But Autolycus heals the leg by singing. What does that tell us about Autolycus?
Wouldn't he be a demigod of Apollo?
Yes, he is somewhat divine. He has what we would think of as supernatural powers or magic. And he is the son of Hermes, who is a spooky kind of god. We think of him as the messenger, but he's also the god of thieves and rascals and stuff like that. But he's also the god of hermeneutics, Hermes, which is translating stuff. So kind of the language god. So he's a magic man as well, or magic god. And by the way, that word Autolycus, what does it mean? Take it apart for me.
I think I might know the auto part of it.
Very good.
Auto
And what is that?
means self.
Right. And what is a lichen?
The wolf.
Right.
Well, it's related to wolves.
Right. So self might be better translated lone wolf. So there are two ways you get yourself kicked out of your ancient village. One is being insufficiently aggressive toward outsiders, who they need you to be, which is cowardly. The other is being overly aggressive toward the people within the village, which means you're a bully. So you get kicked out of the village. What happens to most people when they're separated from their tribe?
Well, they'll typically die because
They die, yes. But what if you're super awesome, you know, a bit of a magic man, and also, you know, able to do, you know, get what you want through violence? You might become the lone wolf, right? I messed that up. There. I think we'll go with that. Okay. So that's why we find Hermes showing up at specific spots in this. Odysseus is his son, grandson, great-grandson, right? Now, why would it be in the interest of Homer to make Athena the primary patron as opposed to Hermes?
Because Athena is the goddess of tactics or wisdom,
Yeah,
which
and also,
is more of what it is.
right, they're both clever. She's not seen as much of a trickster as Odysseus. He's got more of his great-grandfather in him, but she's a more powerful, more honorable god, right? She's Zeus's best child. So you want your, you know, for your great hero, you want a great god. And Hermes, frankly, isn't all that respectable as a god, although he is pretty clever. All right, let's move on. Okay. Okay, one of the themes of the Odyssey okay, we're moving. Oh, we need our Greek. Have y'all got this written down? Okay, there's the search for some kind of social organization that can end conflict. And there are two types of organizing principle right now at this level of Greek society. So what is that first word? Don't all jump in at once.
Oikos?
Yes, oikos, which means, oops, crap. This is why it's easier with the board. I miss chalk. The household, it's also a brand of yogurt. And in this world, each little family has its, or each family, each tribe has its chief. That's why there's so many kings in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Because you'd be like the king of Ruston, and then you're coming with the king of Dubak, but you're falling out with the king of Shudrunt, and so that king's on the other side, and just every little town has its own king, and it's run along familial lines. So how do you form relationships beyond the family?
Xenos.
Yes, Xenos is stranger. Xenia is hospitality toward the stranger. And Zeus is the guardian of hospitality, as is Yahweh, right? Remember when he was smiting Sodom and Gomorrah because they showed bad hospitality? That's just lovely. Okay, so this is hospitality is how you get households together, right? Is there one to the left? Here we go. Oh, sorry about that. Maybe I can shrink it. Ah, there we go. So if you have a household and you've got neighbors, there are basically two ways you can deal with them. You can have hospitality, xenia, or you can have a feud. Did we talk about feuds yet?
Don't think
I
so.
don't believe so.
Okay, so what happens when the hospitality breaks down? Then you have a feud, and just as hospitality is passed down from one generation to another, so is the feud. So Hera is still pissed at whatever's left of the Trojans. You know, and she will hate them forever. But the feuds work that way. Now, what is there that can stop a feud? We're searching, right? We've got this way called Xenia. But when Xenia goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And suddenly the hospitality between Troy and Sparta turns into conflict, and there's no way to get back on the right side of that. There's no social organizing principle that allows you to come in and say, you guys have to get along. So the Greeks are hunting it because at this point, their society is basically a failure. You can only get so far before you get into a feud with your neighbor. And then, I mean, you've got the Peloponnesian War still looming ahead of us, right? That will go on for decades. So what's the way out of this thicket of the feud? And so you wind up with examples of good hospitality. Hospitality is a big thing in this book. So an example of good would be the Phaeacians, which I don't think I spelled right. What am I doing wrong? Phai. Does anybody know? Phaeacians. Oh, in Greek it would have been the iota, but in Latin they turned it into the E. So they show great hospitality, right? The wind, Aeolus, he shows good hospitality. Bad hospitality, any guesses?
The woman who had her on her island, I don't remember her name, like
Right.
Calypso or something?
Well, both of them, Circe and Calypso. And what about
Cyclops?
Yeah. Is it polite to eat your guests?
No.
No. Bad. Strange, we could actually maybe move Circe and Calypso down to because on the one hand, you know, they do feed and clothe him and have a lot of sex with him. But on the other, Calypso, the whole keeping you prisoner for 7 years. And Circe, what did she do?
Circe had Circe turned Odysseus's men into pigs and asked
Right.
Odysseus to sleep with her.
Yes, yes. So let's get to that. She has this potion she feeds sailors when they come to the island. The sailors were pirates when they had half a chance. And so she probably felt justified in turning them into animals. Now, some people might think turning ancient Greek men into pigs was a bit on the nose. It was too obvious, right? So how does Odysseus avoid this fate? Why didn't he turn into a pig?
Oh, Athena, I think it was Athena told him to, I think it was eat a specific herb to make him immune.
Yeah.
And then afterwards to strike at her once she came in close.
I thought it was Hermes.
It may have been Hermes. I remember that it was a god that specifically told him.
Yeah, I don't want to look it up. If somebody can look it up for us and let us know. I think it was the god, because Hermes is more of a witchy kind of god anyway, right? It makes more sense for him to do it, but it could have been Athena. I'm thinking it's Hermes. Okay, so then what happens? And Runkle, you were on it. She sees him not turning into a pig, and what does she suggest?
Sleep with me.
Let's have the sex. And does he?
No, he's like, you're not going to do anything suspicious to me, are you?
Right. And he makes her swear a most excellent oath. And in the ancient mythology, the gods have to keep their oath. If God breaks their oath, they're banished. Well, they're crushed under a mountain for a year, and they're banished from Olympus for 7 years. So no fun if you break a promise. So he's suspicious, right? Now, a normal Greek man at this point, faced with a beautiful goddess who wants to have the sex with them, what does the normal Greek man do?
He would usually go for it.
Right, yeah, let me throw off all my armor. But he gets his armor off, he gets his sword. He's naked, literally and metaphorically, right? He has no weapons anymore, and she can do whatever she wants to him at that point. So he's all, defensive crouch here. No, you aren't going to get me into that bed unless you promise. And then she promises, and then they have the sex. And at some point along the way, over the next year, he remembers, oh yeah, my men are pigs. Could you turn them back, please? So this is an example of Odysseus in his metis, his polytropos. Not only is he good at tricking others, he's mostly good at spotting tricks, except for the huge blind spot, and I use that on purpose, regarding the Cyclops. He's like, ooh, there must be a giant that lives here. I want to stay around and see what that guy looks like. Bad idea, right? But he's also insanely curious. Where else does his curiosity almost get them all killed?
The sirens.
Yes. And how does he wants to hear the music of the sirens without destroying his ship. So how's he do it?
He asks his men to tie him to the pole.
Right. And the more I wiggle and tell you to loosen me up, the more you don't. And they had wax in their ears to keep them from hearing. So he got to hear the music of the sirens and survive. All right. We got to keep moving. Let's get him back home and talk about the contest with the great bow. And what is that about?
The bow was because his wife Penelope decided that she was finally going to stop being indecisive and decided to marry the first man that could shoot I think it was an arrow through five rings.
Right. The bow, he's got to, first the hero has to string the bow and then has to shoot the bow accurately, the way Odysseus had done. But let's think about the sense this makes. So let's see, one of you guys wants to meet a mate, and you put they don't have the tech talk anymore, do they? I guess you could send out a mass email. I'm looking for a suitor who can win my hand, and we will go down to the intramural field this Saturday and have an archery contest. And whoever the winning archer is, I'm going to marry them. Does that make sense? One of you could do that for your research paper. See if that works. See who shows up. I think it would be rather creepy, but this was rather creepy anyway. So why would it make sense to them? Because it makes perfect sense to all the people involved. Why do they want to marry her? Are they in love?
They want to be king.
Yes, they want to be king of the island. And what's your number one job as king of the island?
To defend the place.
Yes. And in order to defend the place from marauders who arrive by boat, what better weapon than a great bow? And you can pick them off in their, you can stand up on the rocks and shoot down at them as they come up on rowboats, right? And make them turn back. But in order to do that, you've got to be, if you want to replace Odysseus, you've got to be as good of a man as Odysseus. And that means you need to be able to use his bow. But there's something deeper going on here. All right. So what is that word?
Iov.
Yeah, agon. I guess you could. G is a weird letter in Greek. It's the agon, where we get the English word agony. Protagonist. Agonistic. And there are any number of words that come from the Greek word agon. But the basic meaning of the word was contest. So agon is the Greek word for contest, and a contest can make you have agony. Agonistic is something that likes to fight, right? A protagonist and an antagonist are in a fight against each other. So the Greek culture loves the contest. We're going to get back to it later when we get to democracy. Because for us, democracy, the point of democracy is letting us pick who our leader will be. And that's part of it. But also for the Greeks, it's a way of picking the best leader. And what are ways to do that? Well, you can have a duel, like a physical duel, but that's of limited use because people tend to get killed that way. So why not have a verbal duel where we get up and compete against each other by speaking, and then people vote on who did the better job, and that's going to be our leader for the next year. War is an agon. Gambling is an agon. And every 4 years, the Greeks actually would stop their war agons to engage in another kind of agon, one that had to do with sports. And what was that?
The Olympics.
Yeah, the Olympics. These are all agons. And so in this culture, the idea of having a contest and the best man wins, man, that's catnip to them, right? But what's the problem?
Almost nobody was able to pull the bow.
Right, the only two were Telemachus, who could have strung it, but his father kind of nodded him off, right? Because this isn't that myth where the kid marries his mother. That's Oedipus, right? We
You
only
don't
need
need
one
a
of
MILF.
right, exactly. So then Odysseus, as the beggar, comes up and strings the bow, and by this time he has laid his plot, and he how are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing all right. He's laid his plot, he springs his trap, and then everybody who's in on it with him starts shooting the suitors, and they die. And he also kills the maids who had been sleeping with the suitors and betraying the family. And they all live happily ever after, right? Or do they? Certain things happen, like he shows Penelope who he is with his leg. And he couldn't reveal himself to her before because she's always surrounded by maids who would then tell the suitors, oh, this old beggar, that's really Odysseus. You need to strike him down. So now that the bad guys are dead in this big showdown, he gets back together with his wife, and it was Hermes that makes the night extra long so they can have extra sex to make up for the last 20 years. One of the gods does it.
I think it's Athena that makes it longer.
Maybe it's Athena. And speaking of hospitality, he goes out to see his old father, Laertes, the next day. And this is a lovely orchard you have there. And he says, oh, I planted it with my son Odysseus. He says, I knew Odysseus. I was his host. I would like to claim my Xenia from you, my hospitality. The old man starts crying because he misses his son and because he doesn't have enough left to really give him anything worthwhile. What's it tell us about the character of Odysseus? Does he only lie because he has to?
No.
He just wanted to lie to his father, right? And then I will tell him, oh no, I'm really Odysseus, and it'll all be happy. But he, this is a problem with his character that will come back to haunt him in later versions of the story. The Romans hate Odysseus. They admire Achilles in his, macho-ness, but they really hate Odysseus winning by trickery. And being such a liar all the time. I mean, do you get tired of a leader who lies twice an hour, every hour that he's awake? It gets old, doesn't it? And I'm sure Odysseus could work out a way to lie in his sleep as well. Okay, so anyway, he explains to Laertes what's happening. Now, what about the suitors? They're dead. But is there anybody left behind that's unhappy about that fact?
It's their parents.
Right. I think we did away with the. The logical next step is a feud. We're going to have a feud. And the people that couldn't be bothered to come and get their sons, when their sons get shot, oh, my baby, this is oikos thinking, right? The oikos is the household, and blood is thicker than water. So yeah, they were doing a terrible thing, but it wasn't worth dying over. And I'm really mad at Odysseus. So they don't have an idea of justice that transcends the oikos. Do you remember the Unabomber? Never hear of him? He made these elaborate bombs. They weren't huge. They were beautiful, like wooden construction, and he'd send them to people he didn't like, but not personally. He would find out about folks and send them a bomb, and it would kill a couple of people. And it was forever. And finally, in desperation, having nothing else to go on, because really good, right? They published his manifesto, which they'd been keeping a secret. This was back before the internet. And they said, if you know this style of writing, let us know. And so his brother and mother, the Unabomber's brother and mother, read it and said, oh my God, he writes like this to us. And so he turned him in. It was Ted Kaczynski. And there's this huge reward to find the Unabomber. And they turned it down and said to divide it among the victims. We don't want the money. They had an ideal of justice that transcended the family, right? Poseidon doesn't care how many Greeks the Cyclops eats. He's my baby, and I side with him when he gets blinded. The suitors didn't care how horrible their sons were. I mean, the suitors' families, how horrible the suitors had been. Well, they're dead now, and I'm upset, and so I'm going to go get my revenge. Ati, yeah. Blindness. Let's see. We're going to come across this word again, which is kind of this blind quest for, blind anger. All right. So, how do we solve this problem for now?
More violence.
Well, do we all go and fight the suitors' families? We're going to kill them and kill their families and kill their little dog too.
Wasn't it just sort of you give them kind of a sense reparations, like you pay them,
you
or
could,
just?
But we aren't going to do that either. Okay, what is a deus ex machina? What does it mean literally?
God of machine or something?
God out of the machinery.
Isn't it kind of like a Chekhov's gun or something like that?
Well, yeah, if there's a gun, it's got to be used. That's okay. Here we go. So they rig you up. I think sometimes they would let you go in a basket. Yeah, this is more what I had in mind. So you want somebody to be high up, like a god, speaking down, and how do you know the gods from the people? Well, you have somebody up on a crane, right? So you got them on this kind of hook, and they come floating out and say they're God stuff. So does anything like this happen at the end of the Odyssey? Where did my Dea Ex Machina go? All right, so try to be a little more rigorous in preparing for class. Let's see if there's a picture of this. So is that her? We're going to pretend that's her. So here, here are the suitors' families coming to fight against Odysseus. I think that maybe is Bo, but I can't really tell, but it doesn't matter. Because down, down, down from heaven she floats and says, "You people stop fighting. Why can't we all just get along?" All right. So she makes peace between the camps, and they go back home with their revenge unrequited, uncompleted. Now, is there a problem with this as a solution to feuding?
Well,
It
yeah.
only stops it for a short while.
It'll keep it in bay for a short while. And what else? Like when your clan and mine start to fight, is there going to be a god who floats down in real life and tells us to stop?
No, outside sources won't always stop it.
There won't be a deus ex machina, or in this case, dea ex machina, because she's a female god. And so the feud will go on and on and on. There's no stopping it. So we're searching for a solution. We've got a temporary fix to this one problem, but not a fix to the problem of the way that Greek society is structured. For that, we will have to move on to tragedies, and the third of our tragedies will kind of figure it out. So that's where we're headed. All right, any questions? Well, I was so afraid we had lost so much time that I just kind of revved right through the Odyssey, but I think I covered all of my main talking points. I can check and see if I missed something important. All right. Intro, that stuff we've already talked about. Where are the study questions? Oh, there they are. The Odyssey, Eurycleia, significance. I'm not going to put all those events in chronological order. I will say this. Most of the fancy stuff that happens in the Odyssey happens in this story that Odysseus tells the Phaeacians. What do you think the chances are that he is telling the Phaeacians the truth? That there really was a Cyclops, that there really were Laestrygonians, that there was Scylla and Charybdis, that there were Sirens.
There's a good chance that he's all making it up just to make a better story.
Right. We know he lies. He lies just to keep in practice. Does he have a motive to lie to the Phaeacians?
Yeah, so they'll be like hospital to him.
Yes. Number one, so they'll be more hospitable. The better the story, the better a load of stuff he'll get from them, and he needs their ships to go home. Number two, the more he, talks up what went on out there, the greater the hero he looks like. So this makes me a real hero. I blinded this Cyclops. He maybe broke a shepherd's arm and stole a bunch of sheep in reality, right? And by the way, what happened to his whole crew? Why is he by himself? Is this the mark of great leadership that every one of your people dies?
No, it's more that you sort of sacrifice them to save yourself, or
yeah, as long
just
as he's
weren't able to
okay, he doesn't care who dies. So let's have the party. Let's cough on each other. Let's get up on TV without our masks on. And if I kill off the, elite of the country, let's go to a fundraiser with the richest people in America who are going to fund my campaign. And I need that money really bad. And so I'm going to go in there and I'm going to eat a buffet with them and take pictures with them and shake their hands, and, hug on them and all this stuff, because people love it. Well, guess what? When they find out he's sick, they're not going to love it so much. Yeah, when you're willing to sacrifice your crew just for yourself, that's not the mark of great leadership. And I think that's another reason Odysseus doesn't stand up very well as a hero to the test of time. We want our leaders to care about us and not just be sociopaths, right? And there's this one thing where, was it Diomedes goes with Odysseus to steal the palladium? How do you, palladium, I think that's what they called it. It was this little statue to Athena that the Trojans had, and they snuck in at night, right? And they got it, and they're coming back, and Diomedes is going ahead, and he has the palladium, and the moon is shining behind, and he sees their shadows, and he sees that Odysseus is about to stab him in the back, literally. You know, got a sword, I'm going to stab this guy. Why is he going to do that? This is his partner.
So he can have all the glory for himself?
Yes, I got all the Timmy. Oh, what's the word for glory? Kudos, right? Like the candy bar. These Greek words keep popping up in places. So yeah, he wants all the glory, and Diomedes, being the badass that he was, swung around and kicked Odysseus' ass and tied him up, and go ahead, made him walk in front all the way back. Because they needed him if they were going to win the war. He couldn't just kill him as much as he might want to. So this is the character of the man we're talking about, right? Very brilliant, but not a great leader. Not in the way we would want our leaders to be great. Achilles, is he upset when his men die?
Yes, he leads them in the front.
Oh yeah, he wants to be out front with them. He feels guilty that he wasn't. He just has this huge meltdown when one soldier dies. I mean, can you imagine Odysseus doing that? It's like, well, I'm alive, so I guess everything's all right. It'll be a happy ending. All right, the Odyssey will work out. The justice of the gods is at work in the universe around us. All right, any questions? All right, I am going to stop sharing and turn off the meeting unless you have a question. Oh, and let's stop recording.